one stand dies, they don't have the opportunity to move on to the next stand that didn't flabber and go to seed. So I think I'm a huge fan of bamboo. I'm not a huge fan of people planting in their backyard that can't take care of it because that just gives it the bad rep. But it's an amazing plant. It grows so quick, and I mean it's beautiful. Look, we have yellow with green stripe here. We have two different varieties on either side here. And
Yeah, yo, Pete, do you have the ability to record on your phone?
I do, yeah.
But
Okay.
I think it's really special places in the garden.
It's good for now.
Close.
It's definitely plenty of time for it to record. But if it gets close to running out, I was say if you don't mind recording, you can record your part and we could like.
I'll send it to you, yeah.
All right, cool. This thing's good for another 30 minutes. Good for another. It's only like 45 about, so it should be like.
I got you. Probably be okay then, but yeah, sure. If need be, I'll certainly.
Okay. I was gonna say there's
Here
a.
we have our artistic back. Here we have our sculpted back. That is a dark art.
So if a tree grows on rocky slopes, that tells me it wants really good drainage. So I wouldn't plant that in a low spot. So your best way to deal with disease and insect is to have a happy, healthy tree, which means planting it in the right spot and then giving it what it needs. If it needs full sun and you don't give it full sun, the tree's going to be weakened and more susceptible to disease or insects. Because the fact of the matter is, the diseases are everywhere. You know, you have fungal spores, you have bacteria, they're around. But if you have a healthy plant, they're able to fight off any disease, and it won't happen. But you know, there's times there's some plants that you want here, and it's got to be here because it looks pretty, and that's that. And that's when you run into problems where you're going to have to spray and treat the tree because that's what you want there, and that's that. And, you know, but yeah, you have to spray. We do spray some here for disease prevention or just stop an insect from completely destroying things. But you kind of have to know the life cycle of the disease and the life cycle of those insects to be able to kind of battle them. This is one of my favorite trees. This is a Serbian spruce. This is a cultivar, which I'm not sure exactly which one is, where it makes it slightly weeping. But this is actually real similar to the growth of the regular species, except it's a lot wider and it doesn't have that turned down tip. But one of the cool things about this tree is if you catch it at different angles, it looks silver. And the silver is not really coming from the needle color. If you look on the needles, there's two white looking stripes. Those are stomatic bands. Stomates are how a tree exchanges gases and releases excess moisture. So what you're looking at is basically, let's call it the lungs of the tree, are these small stripes that give it that gray appearance when you see it in the landscape. But I think that really, as a contrast to the blue spruce, where this one you just get glimpses of it. So I think that kind of makes it intriguing because at certain angles you see those stomatic bands and it gives you that color, but it's not like pow in your face. So I really like this tree. It's one of my favorites.
What is that? I'm sorry.
It's Serbian spruce. And Serbian spruces are a great tree because for residential areas and streets and things, because they're very tolerant of pollution. So I recommend if you're looking for an evergreen, a large evergreen, check out some of the Serbian spruces.
Well, for characteristics of the
Yeah.
The one here?
Yeah, I found it earlier actually.
That one,
Well, I can just turn it over. Green.
I am not. Spruce. Do you think that's snake spruce?
Yeah.
Love that.
Ryan and I have been arguing about that.
I know.
I've been here a long time.
I was gonna say, caught a little glimpse of it on the camera, but I didn't get the details.
It is. I was talking to conifer strength.
Some people go, oh yeah, it's a snake.
Yeah.
And other people, other conifer experts come in and go, no, it isn't.
So, we're talking about this tree here. It's a Norway spruce, but Norway spruce has a form, well, it has a form called a snake spruce, where you see those reflex tips that kind of turn up and look almost like a snake. That's kind of the characteristic of it, except what I know about the snake spruces is they don't get quite that big that quick. So it's questionable.
The snake spruce would be a
Yes, it would be. Yeah. But you know, they say that they grow slower, but you know, it could just be really happy.
That's probably been here 25 years.
Yeah.
And it was probably, if I remember correctly, it was a decent size when we put it in.
Was it?
It thinks it's a snake spruce, even if it isn't.
This is a great tree. This is a Alaskan cedar. It's a Nicotensis. It's a great name for it. That's the species name. So this tree is a huge tree in its wild population. Except this is a pendulous cultivar. And I think this tree is great on its own out in the field. I just love the shape of it and the movement you get from the tree. And it smells great when you touch the needles with the leaves. I recommend this one too. And it's pretty tough. It doesn't get, there's not too many disease issues or insect issues with it. Definitely recommend it. They also have cultivars that are a lot skinnier than this, and also we think, but the species also has a nice weeping quality to it, not quite as much as this one.
Last one. It's very versatile, easy to grow pine in this area. Behind you over here is a winterberry holly. People think of hollies as evergreen trees, but not all hollies are evergreen. The winterberry holly is great because it produces an enormous amount of fruit, and it really, really stands out because there's a foliage on it. And there are cultivars of this is most likely the regular species of winterberry, but there are cultivars that produce bigger fruit, smaller fruit, more fruit. Some have orange berries, some have white berries. But I believe this is the regular species. And as you see behind it, there's small other hollies, and that's basically root suckers off of this. This will colonize an area. Like if I chopped these 2 trees back, you would see tons of those root suckers come up, and that's just kind of how it behaves. It's almost scrubby type of shrub, but great plant, and the birds love them. They hold on to their fruit a little bit longer than some of the other hollies, but once they hit that ripe mark during the winter, you know, this will be empty in a day as soon as the robins decide, oh, it's time to eat this one. And they kind of move on to their next preferred and whatever tastes good at the time. And I guess they like this after the berries have frozen and thawed a few times.
When you say they pop up, you mean they come out from the roots or the seeds?
From the roots. Those are not seedlings. They're offshoots from these plants.
Don't you need a male one?
Not for offshoots, but for seed production, you do need a male. But to get the berries, you also need a male one in the area. As you see, I don't think there's any winter berries near here, but we do have male winter berries on the property. Unlike most conifers have both male and female parts on the same tree. Most hollies do not. Most hollies have a separate male and a separate female tree. There's always exceptions to the rule, but in general, that's how it goes. Yep.
I don't know, with all the pine, all the cultivars, I'm pretty sure. I don't know. It seems very Jersey to me. It's gonna be the new Jersey stereotype.
I don't know, man. Jersey's most people look at Jersey, they just think of that section of the turnpike with all the chemical plants.
Really, they were that fine robin.
There are plants here, even though they're cultivar, they're not necessarily man-made.
Put them in boxes.
It's like, dude, definitely pine trees equal Jersey.
Pine barrens, I guess that makes sense here.
Yeah.
Very good. So this is a cultivar of red pine called Tenyosho pine. And then this cultivar is grown for its growth habits. Grow quite as much as a tree form, more of like a large shrub. This tree is grafted. This cultivar needs different rootstock to survive. So it is grafted onto most likely a different type of red pine rootstock. And as you can see, grafted plants sometimes the rootstock will grow faster than the actual plant that's grafted onto it, or vice versa. And that's when you start to get health issues in grafted plants. And this one has been having a little bit of issues. We've lost a few large branches over the years. But we're going to baby it and see if it does all right for a little while longer. And another way you can kind of tell a tree is pine is if they overproduce seeds. And as you see, this tree has tons of small cones on it.
What's this tree called again?
What's that?
What's this tree called again?
It's in the red pine group, but it's called a Tenyosho pine.
Oh, Tenyosho pine. All right.
Oh, something neat about pine cones. Well, I like to call them cones because, more than pines produce cones. But for the most part, there's trees that create seed that's ready in 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years. And that's kind of interesting because, they all get pollinated the first year. And interesting thing, these are not flowers, so they don't have an animal that comes and pollinates them. They are pollinated by the wind and air movement. So the male, we'll call it a flower for lack of a better, I don't want to get too sciencey. The male part sheds its pollen and it randomly finds its way to the female part. In ones that create a seed the first year, the pollen hits that female part, it creates a pollen tube, and it's fertilized and starts to create the seed. But in 2-year plants, that pollen meets the female part and just kind of hangs out there for a year before it does anything. and then it's pollinated, and then it begins to develop. And then the 3 year is very similar, except it's 2 years until it's actually pollinated. And then after the seeds are pollinated, it's varying between species on how long it takes for that cone to finish maturing and open up and disperse the seeds. Whether the seeds are dispersed just by dropping a cone, the seeds can be dispersed by the cone opening and dropping the seeds out of them, and then a lot of them are assisted by birds. So there's tons of birds, specifically corvid birds, which includes like jays and crows and things like that, ones with bigger, strong beaks. Alright. So the Serbian spruce that I was telling you about over there, that is the regular species of Serbian spruce. That's its typical growth habit. So here's a nice, interesting holly. It's basically our
Damn.
American holly. It's probably been hybrided with another holly, but most of its genetics would
Nice.
be American holly. However, it has yellow berries. Those berries will not turn red. That's the color they're supposed to be. There's a few cultivated types of the American holly that get yellow to gold berries. And that's just a nice variation. You know, you always see the red and the green, so it's nice to have something different. And they tend to stay, the gold varieties, for whatever reason, tend to stay a little more upright and skinnier than our regular American hollies.
You need a special meal for this one? You know,
A special meal? No. Yes. Some of the hollies, you don't need a special male to make the yellow berries. But to pollinate hollies, you need the male that opens its flowers the same time the female is. And there's variations on it. So some cultivars, they'll recommend one cultivar of male over another cultivar of male because their timing syncs up better. Just dropping one. So conifers, basically, yeah, conifer, the Latin term conifer translate to cone bearing, basically. As I showed you that little foundation plant that lots of landscapers love to put right next to their front door, that's it continuing to grow.
tell me, with sun, does it make it more yellow with sun and more green?
In the
and shade?
winter, I think if
Sorry.
yellow cultivars that catch sun in the winter time seem to get that more intense yellow in the winter. I think if you planted this in the shade, the new growth is certainly going to be a little bit greener. Yeah. And it won't be happy anyway if it wants sun. So behind us here and right here are both Himalayan pines. These are both in the white pine group as well. If you look at the two, the only real difference, this one's a little bit thinner because I think it had damage in Sandy. Is that
Sandy
what yeah.
tore a bunch of branches off of this.
But this one's a fabulous cultivar of that species. And it's an amazing cultivar because it gets these little yellow stripes
Excuse me.
along with that bluish green foliage. And the great thing about this tree is the length of the needle. It just gives this billowy habit, almost like Dr. Seussy. The neat thing about the Himalayan pine, it's what they produce turpentine out of. So that's the tree. I mean, most pine trees have that chemical, but this is the one that it's harvested from. Himalayan pine.
I think if they had a hat. No, it would not.
So does everyone know what the big oh my goodness, the weeping blue Atlas cedar over around the corner here? Is that everyone? Well, let's walk by it.
Look at that.
Yes, yes.
This is one of my favorite specimens. This is a weeping blue Atlas cedar. It's from the Atlas Mountains, Ethiopia, and I don't know what what's that? Morocco, yeah. High elevations. It can take the cold weather here, but it's got this beautiful blue color. But the amazing thing about this is a cultivar, a weeping cultivar of blue Atlas cedar, and I'll show you the regular form of it when we go around the corner there. But this is such a fabulous specimen. The shape, the very amorphous shape of it, and the movement of the branches and the hanging of branches. It's just fabulous, fabulous plant. I've seen these trained against the side of a house, trained upright, where all the branches hang down. It literally looked like a living waterfall coming down the side of the house. These are amazing with the snow, and I was hoping we'd have some snow for our winter tour. But they literally look like, a mountain range. You have all these peaks and valleys with the snow on top of it. It's amazing.
Is that one tree?
This is not. There's what, five? There's 5 in here. You can kind of get a peek up their skirts from the sculpture pad. You can see a little. You can look in under there.
Nice.
Yes, there's 5 of them, but they're probably the biggest. Some of the biggest specimens I've seen of this cultivar. They're huge. I think this one's probably a small one because that was a replacement on the end.
Someone threw a cigarette into this at one point. Multiple plant on fire destroyed. Luckily, one of the workers figured out a fire extinguisher, put it out before it ignited the entire plant. So we did lose a steady piece, and so there's one that's a replacement.
Yeah, I think it's that one, right?
That would make sense. That was the last time we allowed smoke in the
Bye.
I'm sorry, I'm busy looking and walking now.
It doesn't quite live up to Maryland.
like a quick little highway.
Oh yeah. So dwarf. So she said that when she bought that shrub, it says dwarf, and but technically, so what dwarf means when somebody's selling a plant? Dwarf means it grows 12 inches or less a year. It's not saying it stops at a certain height. It just only grows 12 inches. Then if there's subcategories under dwarf, like miniature, that I don't know the exact numbers, but would be 6 inches or less a year. And then there's some that grow like an inch and a half a year. So you can kind of figure out placement for things based on those ratings, but you never know. And it depends how old you live too.
Remember when we put the doses first, they mentioned the fire. The cigarette fire.
Yeah, it's a low point in our history. We were actually up in the next thing you want to
Yo, Pete. Yeah, I was gonna say it's like nearing. Yeah, I was gonna say it's nearing the end of the video. I was gonna say I could take a third one, but to be completely honest, it's gonna make it like another 30 or so minutes, and then I'm gonna need to like save the rest of the memory, for other functions on the phone.
Sure.
But I'll let you know when that is.
But another interesting, they have a good shape to them. I really like them as well. Someone was asking about the trees with the exfoliating bark. Those are river birches. They're a birch tree. They're native to this area. They're native all the way south, probably through the Carolinas. More, they like to grow kind of near rivers, hence the name. And they like the cool environment of like more mountainous areas. I'm not entirely sure. Maybe northern Jersey they'd probably be native to, more wooded and elevated areas. But they're an amazing plant because even without the leaves in the winter, they still create a stunning display. That bark, that shredded bark. There's no other trees that are quite that exfoliated that I can think of. They offer that nice brown color, that brown and white color. I really like that. But behind us is a great tree for winter interest too, and I believe this is a hawthorn, and I believe it's the cultivar called Winter King. And Winter King gets a good amount of red berries, and it's a little bit more disease resistant. Being a hawthorn tree, they're in the crabapple family, or no, excuse me, they're in the rose family, so they naturally are susceptible to some diseases. There is a new one planted right to the right, so you can see what they look like as when they're small. But this year, this tree is really a stunning.
Little hawthorn.
In the spring, it gets great flowers that smell great, and they're prolific, just like a cherry tree is. But then it has this amazing bark that's semi-exfoliating and nice stripes, cinnamony looking. But then it gets this amazing amount of fruit and holds it well into the winter. This is one of those like later preferred by the birds trees as well. Now that's about what I might. All right, let's go. Yeah, no good. This one's velvet and yeah, last year.
There's the ice sculpture still there. Oh, what's from when?
Here is a really cool tree that you don't see very often at all. This is Cunninghamia, which is a China fir, I believe is the common name. if you look at it, it looks like these big soft needles, but they're actually kind of spiky. This is Cunninghamia glauca is the cultivar. Or no, glauca is a subspecies. This isn't man-made. It naturally, glauca is referring to the color. It has a glaucous covering that's almost waxy, so it makes it look almost blue. The other form is a lot greener than this. However, the blue form, having that waxy covering, makes it hardier, where probably the regular green form wouldn't do so well here. And as you can see, there's a lot of brown in it. Over the winter time, it gets a winter damage, and it holds on to that for quite a long time. So it kind of gives you that two-tone look. But I think the two colors really kind of complement each other rather than detract from it. You know, a lot of people see that and they say, "Oh, it's dead." But I think it's great. You know. But if you look in there, there's tons of trunks in there. That is not one tree. That's a lot of trees. One of the great things about this tree is if you don't like this brown color, you can chop it right to the ground and it'll send up a couple shoots and you'll have that nice, new, clean foliage. Where some people actually even grow them in the garden specifically for that purpose, just to have a few shoots come up every year. You know, if it's a tree like this that has been in the garden for a while, if you cut this back, it'll shoot up a good 8 feet in 1 year. So it's a cool plant to incorporate into the garden, even if you don't have space for a big evergreen. But the best way to kind of protect it from getting too brown over the winter is make sure it doesn't get too much winter sun, because the freezing thawing effect kind of brings the winter damage on. But this is a great tree. It was historically used for lots of timber purposes in China. It's interesting, there's a group of, I don't remember the names. There is a ethnic group in China that would sustainably grow forests of these and harvest them sustainably and kind of do a managed forestry. They've been doing it for a really long time. Unfortunately, about 15 years ago, they dammed the river that they floated logs down, so they no longer have that practice. But this was an enormously important wood for the Chinese. Built tons of furniture. One of the biggest uses, though, for this is coffin making. Coffee. The wood is highly rot and disease resistant, so it lends itself to many uses. Plus, it's pretty lightweight, but it's also strong at the same time. So this is an important tree. I love the color. I love the needle shape. You don't see any needles.
I don't know if that ended well.
You need both.
True.
At various points in your life, you will need both. Cheers to the coffin.
I like coffee.
Yeah, same here. Someday I'll like a coffee.
I like it.